Morning, everyone. Anyone not ready? Okay. Good morning. I'm Pinellas County Sheriff Bob Gualtieri, and we're here this morning to announce the arrest and termination of Deputy James Jones. On May 29th, 2025, George Miller was booked into the Pinellas County Jail after being arrested by the St. Petersburg Police Department on charges of burglary, felony battery, and criminal mischief. Miller was unable to post bail, and he remained in jail pending the resolution of his charges. From the time that Miller entered the jail, he was known as a problematic inmate. He would often cause problems with staff. He would mouth off to deputies. He taunted other inmates, and overall he had difficulty getting along with everyone, inmates and staff at the jail. On November 20th, 2025, while still in custody after his arrest in May, Miller suffered a medical event and he was transported to Northside Hospital in St. Petersburg. He remained at the hospital for several days, and then medical staff determined that he required surgery. Deputies from the jail remained with Miller as is standard practice for inmates that are transferred from the jail to the hospital. On December 1st of 2025, Deputy James Jones was assigned to guard Miller at Northside Hospital. Miller was in a single room at the hospital. He was confined to his hospital bed, and policy required that his hands and legs be restrained except when necessary for medical care. While in the hospital on December 1st, while being watched by Deputy Jones, Deputy Jones reported to his supervisors that about 8 o'clock that evening that Miller was throwing, as he described it, as a, quote, temper tantrum. Again, Miller was known as a problematic inmate. This wasn't something new. He had been in jail since May, and everyone knew this guy had issues and had problems. But despite Miller being known as a problematic inmate, there is an indication that Deputy Jones may not have had Miller properly restrained, and at least one hand or leg may have been unrestrained while Miller was under Deputy Jones's supervision. But Deputy Jones was less than candid with supervisors, and when asked about this incident that we're going to talk about here today, and because there's no video evidence, we're unable to definitively determine whether Miller was or was not properly restrained while in the hospital bed as required by policy. Nonetheless, on that day, at about 10:30 p.m., and this is now about 2.5 hours after Deputy Jones reported to his supervisor that Miller was acting out, a registered nurse at Northside Hospital who was assigned to care for Miller was standing in the hallway outside of Miller's hospital room wherein she heard a shouting match between Miller and Deputy Jones. So they're yelling at each other. They're having this big shouting match as described by the nurse. When the nurse looked into the room, she observed Deputy Jones, and as she described it, slam dunk, I put that in quotes, slam dunk, punch Miller with a closed fist in the middle of his chest. So the way she described it is that Miller's laying in his hospital bed, and when she heard the commotion, looked inside, and that there was a shouting match going on, and that Deputy Jones, with a closed fist like this, just came down hard and slammed Miller right in the middle of his chest. The nurse later entered Miller's hospital room and observed that Miller also had a contusion on his left cheek and a laceration over his eye. Miller told the nurse when she came into the room that Deputy Jones, quote, punched the shit out of me. The nurse reported this to her supervisor, and hospital supervision then reported this to the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office. We began an investigation, and evidence shows that Miller did not have any injuries prior to the shouting match that he had with Deputy Jones, and the nurse then seen Deputy Jones punch Miller. When asked about the incident the next day by his lieutenant, Deputy Jones stated that Miller had kicked him and had struck him. The evidence is contrary to that, and Jones's statements are inconsistent with all of the facts, and Jones lied to his lieutenant when he made that statement the next day. Moreover, Deputy Jones never reported being struck by Miller to anyone the night before. He never logged any such incidents in the hospital room log as required by policy. He never wrote an incident report and never reported that he used force or wrote any type of a use of force report. So just to put it in the simplest of terms, Deputy Jones got into an argument with an obstinate inmate restrained in a hospital bed. he lost his temper and punched the inmate in the chest and face, splitting open the inmate's forehead above his eye. There is simply no lawful reason for Deputy Jones to strike Miller, and in doing so, he committed a crime. He committed a battery. Deputy Jones was arrested last night on one count of battery and booked into the Pinellas County Jail. He posted $1,000 bail a little after 9 o'clock last night, and he was released just like any other defendant. Deputy Jones is 66 years old. He worked for the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office since 2021, and prior to that he worked as a correctional officer for the Florida Department of Corrections from 2004 until 2021 when he began with us. So Deputy Jones had about 22 years experience as a correctional officer between his time here and his prior employment with the Department of Corrections. He was fired immediately upon his arrest last night. So these things happen. It's not reflective of the deputies of the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office. As I said, what the evidence shows is that there was a screaming match between Jones and Miller, and Jones didn't act as a deputy sheriff should act. He didn't act professionally and just handle the situation. He lost his temper and he split open Miller's eye, punched him in the chest and split open his eye, and he's got to be accountable for that. So he was treated like everybody else. He's charged with a crime. He's fired. He's gone. As we always are, we're forthright and transparent when these things happen. Occasionally they do happen. It's not a good moment, but when you have the amount of inmates that pass through the jail and the amount of deputies we have, we've had these things happen over time. But we always hold people accountable, and it's things that happen. So, anybody have any questions?
Standard procedure to just have one deputy with an inmate. Did that change? How's that?
No, and I'm not going to get into the specifics of hospital security and what we do and don't do, because that can be a very sensitive topic. But there are times, certainly, okay, and sometimes we'll have multiple deputies. And I'm not saying during the whole time. I mean, we have other inmates in the hospital, so there's a lot of staff around. We have adequate personnel there. In this particular case, at that moment, it was a one-on-one situation.
And the nurse just kind of seen something, saying something, and she, saw it wasn't correct, and kind of, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, she did her job, and she did what was right. Obviously, she was concerned and probably, appalled with what she saw, realized that it wasn't right, and she did the right thing, absolutely the right thing. She did what she should have done. I mean, there's no question that Jones was wrong. He did everything wrong, and he wasn't following policy anyway. Again, as I said, he was lying about stuff. The inmate probably wasn't properly restrained. We're having some trouble figuring out exactly what was restrained or not. Inmates mouth off. Okay, so that's what we do. I mean, go figure. What? That's something new and novel. You got mouthy inmates. It's we got 3,200 of them sitting out there. So he just needs to be professional and handle it. But he lost his cool. He lost his temper. Punched him in the chest, as I said, really slammed down hard on his chest and punched him in the face strong enough with his fist to, as they would say, bust open his eye. So, that's bad, and he's accountable for it.
Sheriff, we'll just give a chance now to sort of reiterate these policies to make sure that other deputies won't lose their temper like this again?
We have almost 3,000 employees here, 1,500 deputies. 1,499 of them are going to do the right thing. We have good policies in place. We have good practices in place. We have good deputies. Occasionally, something like this happens. Jones had 22 years as a correctional officer. He had a lot of time in the Florida Department of Corrections as an officer. He had the last 4 years here as a deputy. Never had any issues or problems. And he lost it. So I don't think this is one of those things. We don't need new policies or procedures. We don't need to send a message. Everybody gets the message. That's the environment you work in. Be professional. Deal with it professionally. Don't lose your cool. And this guy just, he lost his cool. So this is an anomaly. It's a one-off. Again. Every so often we have a situation where somebody does something that they shouldn't do, and this is one of those cases. But when that happens, the message is sent. You're going to be treated like everybody else. We're going to be forthright and transparent about it. We're going to call it what it is. And, he got booked into jail just like, Miller was booked into jail. So, our people do a good job. They do the right thing. We got the right protocols and policies in place. We got the right culture, the right climate. Everybody knows what the deal is. But when somebody screws up, then they you know, the consequences happen, and that's what's happened here. You know, he again, the guy is 66 years old. He had 22 years in the system, 3 years away from retirement. You know, that ain't gonna happen for him. So.
Were there any other incidents with this deputy in the past, or was this more of a one strike and you're done?
Yeah, I don't know of any other ones. We don't know of any other ones. This is a one-time thing. Like I said, you know, he just lost his temper. He lost his cool. There's no indication that there were any other problems with this deputy. We didn't see anything. There was nothing that we saw this coming. There was no, you know, performance issues. There was nothing like that. So this is just one of those things that happens. All right, thanks everybody.